Hello, I'm glad you're here. It's been a long day, hasn't it? Maybe your mind is still spinning or your body's still holding on to a bit of tension. That's all right. You don't need to fix anything right now. You don't even need to stay awake. Tonight I'll be keeping you company, just gently, while we take a quiet look at the life of someone who saw the world a little differently. Not in a loud, attention-seeking way, but in a quiet, curious, thoughtful kind of way. His name was Nikola Tesla. And while you've probably heard the name, maybe from school or from science or from the car, what you may not have heard is how gentle, sensitive, and deeply imaginative he really was. He didn't just invent things. He dreamed about light. He saw ideas the way other people saw trees or buildings, real and solid even before they existed. He believed in invisible forces, not because he wanted to believe, but because he could see them. He lived most of his life on the edge of brilliance and solitude, and gave the world things it wasn't quite ready for. He made electricity safer. He imagined wireless communication long before anyone else. And when he wasn't building machines, he was walking in parks, feeding pigeons, or reading quietly into the night. Tesla's life wasn't always easy, but it was filled with light, in many forms. So tonight, we'll just take it slow. We'll drift through some of the moments that made him who he was. No pressure to listen too closely, no pressure to remember. Just let the words wash gently past you like soft rain on a window. Let your body relax a little deeper. And we'll begin, not with inventions or machines or fame, but with a small child, born during a storm. Chapter 1. The Lightning Boy. He was born in the middle of a storm. Not a soft summer drizzle, but a loud, flashing, restless thunderstorm that echoed across the hills and valleys of Smiljan, a small village nestled in the mountains of what is now Croatia. It was midnight, July 10th, 1856. Outside, wind rushed over the roof. Lightning split the sky. Inside, the house was dimly lit by a flickering oil lamp, its glow bouncing gently off the stone walls and wooden beams. A woman lay in labor, breathing in slow, exhausted waves. And in that moment, as thunder cracked once again, she gave birth to a boy. The midwife, startled by the flash, is said to have whispered, "This child is born in darkness." But the mother, barely lifting her head, gave a small smile and said, "No, he is born in light." That child was Nikola Tesla. From the beginning, he was different. He was quiet, gentle, delicate, but alert. He watched things carefully. Birds, wheels, fire, rain. He had a mind that didn't seem to stop. Not just thinking, but sensing. He once said that even as a small child, he could feel when the air changed. He could sense the pressure in a room, the rhythm of footsteps, the way a door opened slowly or fast. His father, Nikola Tesla, was an Orthodox priest, a serious man, deep-voiced and thoughtful, who loved books and theology and believed strongly in structure and faith. He hoped his son might follow that path, become a priest himself, maybe even a writer. His mother, Georgina Duca Tesla, had no formal education. She didn't need it. She was naturally brilliant, with an extraordinary memory and a gift for invention. She created simple household devices from scraps and imagination. She could recite hundreds of lines of poetry from memory. She worked with her hands constantly, quietly, solving everyday problems with quiet grace. Nikola would later say that all of his invention, all of his creative instinct, came from her. She made things, not for recognition, not for praise. She simply made them, and he watched her do it. He had siblings, and one older brother, Dane, who was by all accounts the pride of the family. Dane was bright, charming, warm. He made people smile. He made them proud. But when Nikola was 5 years old, Dane died. Some say he fell from a horse. Others say it was more complicated. What is known is this: The loss changed Nikola forever. He withdrew, became more inward, more sensitive, more cautious. He began to see things others didn't, not spirits, not ghosts, but patterns. He once said, "After Dane died, the world began to shimmer, like it wasn't fully stable anymore." He noticed things most others ignored, like the way a candle flickered when someone entered a room, or how a floorboard creaked differently after rain. And above all, he noticed electricity. Even as a young child, he experienced what he called bright flashes in his mind, sudden visions that came with almost painful intensity. They weren't imagination, they were whole, solid images, machines, wheels, gears, complex structures, fully formed, floating in his mind. At first, they frightened him. He didn't understand them. He couldn't control when they came, but over time, he learned to use them. By age 7, he was designing devices in his head, not sketching, not building, just picturing. He could rotate them mentally, take them apart, see how the parts fit, and then, if needed, build them exactly as they appeared. This ability would stay with him for life. Nikola struggled in school for reasons that weren't academic. He learned easily, too easily at times. He could memorize entire chapters in a single reading. He could perform complex math faster than his teachers. He spoke multiple languages by adolescence: Serbian, German, Italian, and a bit of French. But he was misunderstood. He didn't fit in with the other children. He disliked being touched. He couldn't stand the texture of certain fabrics. He avoided pearls and earrings, which made him physically ill to look at. He counted his steps. He avoided shaking hands. He had to wash obsessively if something felt out of place. In another century, these traits might have had names. Back then, they were just called strange. At home, he continued inventing. He made small wheels and propellers from wood. He studied birds, how they glided, how they turned. He built a miniature watermill in the stream behind his house and watched it spin hour after hour, wondering how to make power flow from motion. He loved thunderstorms. While most children ran from them, Tesla walked toward them. He watched the lightning trace across the clouds. He counted the seconds between flash and sound. He listened to the humming air and said it felt alive. Electricity, he believed, was more than just energy. It was everywhere. By his teenage years, he was devouring books on physics and mathematics. He studied magnetism, optics, the nature of waves. He stayed up late with a candle, reading until the wax ran low and the wick burned out. Then he would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking. Always thinking. He once said, "I do not rush, I do not sleep. I think and I see." He enrolled in a technical school in Graz, Austria, where he began formal studies in engineering. He was driven, brilliant, and intense, and soon overwhelmed. In Graz, he studied day and night. He worked harder than anyone else. He stopped sleeping more than a few hours at a time. He lost weight. His hands began to tremble. Professors warned him, "You are working too much." But Tesla couldn't stop. He had ideas pouring into his mind, faster than he could keep up. He would sit in lectures, then rush home to write, not notes, but designs. Machines he hadn't built, devices no one had imagined. He began to suffer from exhaustion, migraines, sudden fevers, hallucinations. Eventually he collapsed, physically, mentally, entirely. He returned home, frail, thin, nearly broken. His family feared he wouldn't recover, but something in him remained unshaken. Even when his body failed, his mind continued, quietly, relentlessly. He spent that time resting, walking near the river, reading poetry, and slowly he began to rebuild. And in those quiet walks, watching swans glide across water, hearing the wind in the trees, he started forming something new. A vision of a different kind of electricity. Not the jarring, dangerous kind that sparked and hissed, but smooth, alternating, flowing back and forth like breath. He began dreaming of currents that moved like the tide. He didn't tell anyone yet, not fully, but the seed was planted. He saw a future powered by invisible rhythm, electricity that could stretch across continents, and deep down, he believed it could be shared with the world. Not sold, not locked away, but shared. Freely. It would take years before the world would listen. He would need to travel far from his home, to America, to meet other inventors, to challenge giants like Edison. But all of that would come later. For now, he was just a boy with too many thoughts and not enough rest, walking slowly along a riverside path, holding impossible ideas gently in his mind. And somewhere behind his eyes, the future was already humming. Chapter 2: Visions and Collapse. Nikola Tesla never fit neatly into the world around him. Even as a teenager, he moved differently, thought differently. Where others saw facts, he saw frequencies. Where others built slowly, he built in his mind, whole and exact. No blueprints, no trial and error. He had always been able to visualize things with perfect clarity. A gear, a motor, a rotating magnet. He would close his eyes and see the design suspended before him, rotating, disassembling, real. And when the image held steady long enough, he would quietly whisper, "Yes, that's how it should turn." This was the beginning of something astonishing, but it came at a cost. After his recovery from collapse, Tesla felt a shift. He no longer chased invention out of urgency. Instead, ideas came to him gently, as if he had been chosen to receive them. He enrolled in the Technical University of Graz in Austria. It was 1875, and Tesla was 19. There he threw himself into study. He consumed books on mathematics, physics, mechanics. He spent his evenings in the lab, watching sparks leap from coils, feeling the pull of magnets, and dreaming of how energy could be bent, softened, reshaped. He studied under professors who admired his brilliance. At first, they watched as he solved problems faster than they could write them. He memorized entire textbooks. He learned and spoke German, French, and Latin. He performed calculus mentally, faster than others with pen and paper. But then he stopped sleeping. Not out of defiance, not out of arrogance. He simply had too many ideas and not enough time. Tesla once said, "Sleep is a waste of potential thought." And so, he stayed awake, sometimes for 48 hours, sometimes for more. He paced through the night. He scribbled on the margins of books. He whispered numbers and phrases to himself like lullabies that never arrived. By his second year, the professors grew worried. Not about his intelligence, but about his body. He was losing weight rapidly. His hands shook, his eyes sank, his voice grew quieter, then almost silent. They warned him to slow down, but he couldn't. The visions had returned, clearer than ever. They burned behind his eyelids, vivid and magnetic. In them, he saw coils turning inside each other. Currents moving not just in one direction, but two, forward, then back, like breath. He believed he was being shown the secret to a new kind of electricity. Not the brute, dangerous direct current that sparked and died, but something that flowed in harmony. Alternating current, AC. But at that time, the idea was unproven, unwanted, even dangerous to suggest. The world ran on direct current. Tesla's idea was invisible, theoretical, and to some, absurd. Still, he kept working, trying to understand, trying to explain. Eventually, his health collapsed again. This time, more severely. He lost nearly all strength. He couldn't stand. He suffered hallucinations, colors, sounds, tastes that weren't real. He became hypersensitive to noise and light. The ticking of a clock made him tremble. A reflection on glass overwhelmed him. Doctors feared he wouldn't survive the year. He withdrew from university. He never graduated. And for a while he disappeared from public life. He wandered, read poetry, watched rivers flow, and believed he saw the pulse of the earth. It was in this quiet season that the seed of the induction motor and the world's first true AC system took root in his mind. He knew how it should work, how it should rotate. He saw the motor, balanced, turning in rhythm with unseen pulses. It was clear, but he couldn't build it. Not yet. He had no funding, no support, no reputation, just the vision. He moved to Budapest in 1881, still frail, still healing. There, he found work as a draftsman at the Budapest Telephone Exchange. It was quiet work, routine, but Tesla didn't mind. He walked the city often, watched sunsets over the Danube, carried a notebook in his coat. And one evening, as the sky turned from gold to gray, he paused beneath a street lamp and saw the full mechanism in his mind. The rotating magnetic field, the motor, the balance, everything. He picked up a stick and drew it in the dirt. His friend, Anthony Seghetti, who was walking with him, later recalled, he drew the diagram and explained everything, the fields, the coils, the rotation. It was already perfect. Tesla smiled softly and said, "I found it." But discovery doesn't mean success. In 1882, Tesla took a job in Paris, working for the Continental Edison Company. He repaired electrical systems, rebuilt dynamos, solved problems others couldn't. He earned a reputation for precision, but not yet for vision. He was told to follow instructions, not to invent. Still, he wrote in his spare time, refined his ideas, sketched his rotating magnetic field again and again, in corners of paper and between assignments. Eventually, his supervisors noticed. One wrote to Thomas Edison in America and said, "I think you should meet this young man." In 1884, Tesla boarded a ship for New York. He brought with him a letter of introduction, a coat, a notebook, and 4 cents in his pocket. The journey was rough. He was robbed. He nearly missed the boat. He arrived thin, anxious, hopeful. And within a few days, he stood face to face with Thomas Edison. They were opposites. Edison was loud, confident, rugged. Tesla was quiet, delicate, internal. Edison believed in trial and error. Build, break, build again. Tesla believed in thought. See it, refine it, then build, once, perfectly. But they both loved electricity. Tesla worked under Edison briefly, improving machines, refining dynamos, repairing faults. He worked long hours, evenings, nights, and eventually asked for funding to pursue his AC motor. Edison declined. He didn't believe in alternating current. He said it was dangerous, impractical, unnecessary. So Tesla left. He found himself alone. Again, he dug ditches for $2 a day. He lived in small rooms. He struggled with depression, and still, he held on to the idea. The vision hadn't changed. It still rotated clearly in his mind. Eventually, he secured a patent, then an investor, and finally, a lab. In that small lab, Tesla built his first working AC motor. It turned, smoothly, quietly, exactly as he had imagined it would, and it changed everything. It would power homes, factories, cities. It would send electricity over long distances, safely, cheaply, beautifully. Tesla had done it, but the battle was only beginning. Chapter 3: The War of the Currents. By 1887, Nikola Tesla was no longer a name lost in the margins. He had a small laboratory, a modest team, and most importantly, a motor that worked. The motor didn't sputter or spark. It didn't hiss with danger. It hummed. It was elegant, balanced, reliable, and it ran on alternating current, electricity that moved in waves, not straight lines. Unlike direct current or DC, which had to travel only short distances before it lost strength, Tesla's AC could travel far. It could rise and fall like a tide. It could reverse itself 60 times a second, carried across wires and towns and cities with ease. It was, by nearly every measure, superior. But it wasn't popular, not yet, because Thomas Edison, the most powerful name in American electricity, didn't believe in it. And that disagreement would spark a battle. Tesla's AC system had caught the attention of a powerful figure, George Westinghouse. Westinghouse was an inventor and businessman. He had built his fortune on air brakes for trains and had a strong reputation for supporting innovation. He visited Tesla's lab, listened to the pitch, watched the motor spin, and almost immediately he knew this could power the world. He licensed Tesla's patents, hired him for consultation, and began promoting alternating current on a national scale. For the first time, Tesla had what he had always lacked: resources, backing, belief. But success also drew resistance. Edison wasn't just skeptical of AC. He was publicly and fiercely opposed to it. He had built his own empire on direct current, DC. Thousands of homes and businesses were already wired to Edison's standard. He didn't want to lose ground, so he began a campaign, part technical, part personal, against AC. He claimed it was dangerous, uncontrollable, capable of killing without warning. He called it a threat to the public. And to demonstrate his point, he began staging public demonstrations. At these events, Edison's team, or rather his associate Harold Brown, used AC to electrocute stray dogs, sometimes larger animals, all in front of curious crowds. It was meant to shock, and it did. The press ran stories about the deadly current. Parents grew fearful. Investors hesitated. Tesla was disturbed, horrified even. He believed electricity was sacred, a force to be handled with respect, not spectacle. It wasn't meant to be used this way, but he didn't retaliate with showmanship. He kept working, quietly. Then came an opportunity. A massive hydroelectric project was forming at Niagara Falls, a plan to turn the power of the cascading water into energy for homes and industry across the state of New York. It was ambitious, symbolic, and hotly contested. Edison lobbied for a DC system, but Westinghouse, backed by Tesla's patents, offered something better, more efficient, more elegant, more future-ready. In 1893, Tesla and Westinghouse won the bid. They would power Niagara. They would light up Buffalo. They would prove that AC was not only possible, but superior. That same year, Tesla was invited to demonstrate his technology at the Chicago World's Fair, also called the Columbian Exposition. It was one of the most ambitious gatherings in history. 27 million visitors. Dozens of countries represented. New inventions, new ideas. Tesla's system lit the entire fair. The fountains, the halls, the walkways, all glowing with cool, even light. It was mesmerizing and undeniable. The world saw what alternating current could do. And with that, the tide turned. Edison's campaign slowed. Public fear faded. AC gained ground, not just in America, but across the world. It began powering cities, factories, and trains. Even homes that had once relied on kerosene now glowed gently with electric light. Tesla had done it. The vision he'd held in his mind for over a decade, the design he'd sketched in the dirt, the motor that had once seemed impossible, had become reality. But Tesla wasn't one to celebrate. He rarely paused for applause. He disliked fame. He felt uncomfortable at large gatherings. At the World's Fair, he gave demonstrations showing wireless lamps, rotating fields, and energy transfer without wires, but he often seemed distracted. Even in victory, he was already thinking ahead. Not about motors, not about currents, but about distance. He believed electricity could move through the air, through the earth, without wires. He imagined a world where towers stood on mountaintops, sending energy from place to place, not through cables but through resonance. He once said, "If you only knew the magnificence of the numbers 3, 6, and 9, you would have the key to the universe." To most, it sounded poetic. To him, it was literal. He believed energy pulsed in rhythm, that everything, even thought, had frequency. And if he could match that frequency, he could transmit power invisibly. This idea was, to say the least, ahead of its time. He called it wireless power transmission. He demonstrated it in his lab, lighting lamps held in his hands with no wires, sending small signals across short distances, moving energy through air. People were intrigued. The press followed him. Papers called him the Wizard of the West and the man who tamed lightning. But Tesla didn't want titles. He wanted results. And for that, he needed funding. Westinghouse, though respectful, began to pull back. The company had taken financial hits. AC was now widely adopted. There was less need for Tesla's consulting. And so quietly, Tesla's role diminished. He was offered generous buyouts and arrangements. He tore up his contract with Westinghouse to relieve the financial strain. He said, "You have kept your word, I will keep mine." He never asked for royalties. The patents he held, which could have made him one of the wealthiest men on earth, he simply let go. Some called it noble. Others called it foolish. Tesla didn't seem to care. He believed his purpose was bigger than wealth. He turned inward, began working on what he believed would be his life's masterpiece, a tower, a transmitter, a way to send power, messages, maybe even images through the sky. And so he moved east to Long Island to begin again. Chapter 4: The Tower and the Fall. In the early 1900s, Nikola Tesla set his sights on something no one else dared to build. He wanted to send energy, wirelessly, not just across a room, not just to light a bulb without a cord, but across continents, across oceans, across the earth itself. He believed it could be done. The concept was bold, a world wireless system where towers would hum with resonance and transmit power, sound, and even images through the atmosphere. No wires, no limitations. People could receive energy from the air just like they received sunlight. He believed it would free the world, and he believed he could build it. He called it the Wardenclyffe Tower. He found land in Shoreham, Long Island, a quiet space near the water with open sky and deep soil. He believed the earth itself could act as a conductor, a giant body of mass that would carry frequency like a drum. Skin carries vibration. He began to design, carefully, precisely. His blueprints were intricate, clean, rotating in his mind before his pencil touched paper. He envisioned a tower made of wood and copper, over 180 feet tall, with a rounded dome at the top like a great steel mushroom. Beneath it, a laboratory, a shaft sunk deep into the earth, and copper coils coiled like sleeping snakes beneath the surface. The tower would hum, it would glow, it would change everything. But to build a tower like that, he needed help. And so he approached J.P. Morgan. Yes, that Morgan, the banker, the tycoon, the man whose name sat atop railroads and steel and the rising empire of money. Tesla presented his case, explained how wireless transmission would allow messages and energy to be sent instantly, without cables, without limits. He spoke of reaching ships at sea, of lighting remote villages, of uniting the world in a quiet, invisible hum. Morgan agreed. He gave Tesla $150,000, a large sum, but not enough for everything Tesla had planned. Still, Tesla moved forward. Construction began in 1901. The tower rose slowly. Workers hammered beams. Copper cables were coiled beneath the ground. Tesla paced back and forth across the site in a long coat, sometimes stopping to adjust something himself, or to stare out at the horizon as if listening to it. He worked through day and night. He barely slept. He forgot meals. He murmured calculations under his breath like prayers. This, he believed, was his true work. Everything before had been preparation. This tower was his gift to the world. But the world was changing. That same year, 1901, a young Italian named Guglielmo Marconi successfully sent the first wireless telegraph signal across the Atlantic. He used some of Tesla's own ideas, even some of his patents. Tesla was hurt, but more than that, he was worried. Because Morgan noticed. Morgan had funded Tesla to create communication, not global energy. And now, with Marconi succeeding in that space, Tesla's idea began to seem redundant. Tesla tried to explain, "My work is larger. I am building a system to power the world." But Morgan, famously practical, replied, "If anyone can draw on the power, where do we put the meter?" Tesla had no answer. He wasn't interested in meters, he wanted freedom. Funding slowed, supplies grew sparse. Tesla borrowed, pled, wrote letters, met with bankers, but the money didn't come. By 1905, construction on the tower had stalled. The copper dome was unfinished. The systems below incomplete, and Tesla was fading. He began to withdraw. Friends noticed his health slipping. He spoke less, wrote more. He stopped inviting guests. He grew obsessed with the pigeons that gathered near his rented room at the Hotel New Yorker. He fed them daily, spoke to them softly. He claimed one white pigeon visited him each morning and followed him at dusk. "I loved that pigeon as a man loves a woman," he once said. "As long as I had her, my life had meaning." The tower sat unused. Eventually, it was dismantled and sold for scrap to pay Tesla's debts. His dream had crumbled, but he never stopped believing in it. Even without a tower, Tesla continued to file patents. He dreamed of wireless light, of particle beams, of mechanical oscillators that could vibrate buildings to their foundations. Many dismissed these later inventions as fantasy. The press called him eccentric, mad, a forgotten genius clinging to impossible ideas. But not all of them were impossible. In fact, decades later, scientists would quietly rediscover many of his theories in radar, in wireless charging, in renewable energy fields. Tesla had simply lived too far ahead. His financial life collapsed. He moved from hotel to hotel, often unable to pay the bill. He gave lectures when he could. He still wrote, always formally, always with clarity. But the world had moved on. Industry had found new faces, new spokesmen, quieter men in labs, flashier men in suits. Tesla remained where he always had been, somewhere between light and silence. In 1931, Time magazine put him on the cover. He turned 75 that year. He received letters from Einstein, from admirers around the world. But by then, he was mostly alone. His white pigeon, his closest companion, died in his arms. He said he saw a beam of light leave her eyes, pure, bright, and silent. After that, he said, something inside him dimmed. In 1943, in room 33327 of the Hotel New Yorker, Nikola Tesla died quietly in his sleep. He was 86. There was no great ceremony, no parade, just a man in a dark suit with a notebook full of wonders and a heart that had given everything it had to the world. He had dreamed of towers, of clouds that carried light, of fields that sang with energy. And though few understood him while he was alive, he never stopped offering his vision, even when the tower fell. Chapter 5: The Quiet Years. The tower was gone. The money had dried up. The headlines had faded. But Nikola Tesla remained. Not as a titan of industry, not as a public figure, but as something quieter. A solitary man, walking between street lamps, always thinking, always listening to something most others could not hear. In the years after Wardenclyffe fell silent, Tesla entered what some called his decline. But for him, it was not an ending. It was a different kind of season. He moved into the Hotel St. Regis, then later to the Waldorf Astoria, and finally, for the longest stretch, to a modest suite in the Hotel New Yorker, room 3327. 2 rooms, 1 desk, a small bed, a window with pigeons just beyond. There were no assistants now, no technicians, no investors. But Tesla still worked. He rose late in the morning, dressed meticulously in suits that had grown worn at the cuffs. He walked the city, always the same paths, always alone. He returned each evening to a small meal of milk, bread, and boiled vegetables. And he thought. He wrote letters, many of them never sent. He read poetry, especially Goethe. He reread favorite novels. He spent long hours simply staring out the window, fingers steepled beneath his chin as the traffic far below moved like silent electricity. To most, he appeared a man untouched by time, elegant, peculiar, old-fashioned. But inside, he was still building. Not machines, not towers, but thoughts. New theories, new shapes of energy, new questions that no one else was asking anymore. He gave interviews from time to time. They would come to his room, expecting a broken man. What they found was a gentleman, sharply spoken, dryly humorous, endlessly curious. In one interview he said, "I am not discouraged. What I have done will sooner or later be wrought out by the world. It is not the matter of a single man." He wasn't bitter, not exactly. He was simply elsewhere. The pigeons became a fixture of his life. Each morning he walked to Bryant Park with a bag of seeds. The birds gathered around him without fear. They landed on his shoulders, his arms, even the brim of his hat. He spoke to them, whistled quietly, called them each by their own names. There was one pigeon, pure white with soft red eyes, that visited him every evening. He loved her, not in metaphor, not symbolically. He said she was the only thing that truly understood him. When she was sick, he spent money he didn't have on medicine. He had a special window built in his hotel room just for her. And when she died, he wept. He later wrote, "When she died, something went out of my life. Up to that time, I knew with certainty my work was finished." Tesla's later inventions were strange, fascinating, sometimes unbelievable. He claimed to have designed a death ray, a directed energy weapon he called teleforce. He said it could bring down planes from hundreds of miles away. He sketched out a new kind of motor that had no moving parts. He outlined a theory of non-Hertzian waves, vibrations outside the known spectrum. Most of this remained in notebooks. Few saw them. Fewer still understood them. But he kept writing, kept imagining. He said, "The future will show whether my foresight is as accurate now as it has proved in the past." By the 1930s, Tesla had become something of a mystery. Part scientist, part legend, part recluse. The press reported on his birthday each year, and he would often give a statement, part scientific update, part philosophical musing. At age 75, he said he was working on transmitting energy through the upper atmosphere. At 78, he said he could split the earth like an apple if he wanted to. At 80, he announced he had perfected a technique for photographing thoughts. Few believed him, but many still listened. He once wrote, "The present is theirs, the future, for which I have really worked, is mine." It wasn't arrogance. It was simply how he saw the world. He never married. He believed love distracted from purpose. He never bought property, never built a home. He died without a bank account, without heirs, without the fame or fortune so many around him had chased. But he also died with his dignity intact, with his beliefs unshaken, and his mind, even in his final years, still alight. In early January of 1943, Tesla grew quiet. He stopped feeding the pigeons, he stopped responding to letters, and on January 7th, a maid entered his room and found him. Still, he had died in his sleep. 86 years old. Alone, but peaceful. The city barely noticed at first. It was wartime. The papers were full, but in time, the world remembered. The FBI seized his papers, his notes, his diagrams. They were reviewed, cataloged, and some say, quietly shelved. Some ideas were said to be too advanced, others too strange. Some may have changed the world. We may never know. Later that year, the U.S. Supreme Court restored one of his key patents, proving Tesla's role in the invention of radio. He had been right. All along, his name slowly returned to textbooks, his inventions to museums, his image to documentaries. But even now, Tesla remains a figure half in shadow, a man who saw the world not as it was, but as it could be. Not everyone understood him, not everyone believed him, but he didn't need them to, because he believed in the world, in its hidden forces, its deeper harmonies, its quiet mysteries, still waiting to be heard. Chapter 6: Legacy in the Dark. Nikola Tesla lived in a time of fire and smoke. Factories, steam, sparks, wires, gears that ground through coal and oil and sweat. But he dreamed in light. He dreamed of a world without wires, a world where energy hummed gently in the air, waiting to be received. A world where invention was not about conquest, but about connection. And though the world didn't catch up to him in time, not fully, it has been slowly, quietly arriving ever since. Tonight, we take a moment to feel that, to lie still and listen, to the hum in the wall, the flicker of a screen, the way energy slips through space, invisible, constant, patient. Some of that was Tesla. He wasn't like the others. He didn't crave applause. He rarely sought credit. He didn't hoard ideas or patent them purely for profit. He shared, because he believed the point of discovery was not ownership, but offering. He believed knowledge should circulate, like current, flowing from one person to the next, lighting what it touched. When he died in 1943, the world was distracted. There was a war. Nations were burning. Technology had become weaponized. The atomic age was beginning. And Tesla, old, penniless, and without a working lab, was barely a footnote. But not forever. Within a decade, researchers began to revisit his work. His theories on resonance, his predictions about wireless transmission, his vision of a global power grid. They saw his diagrams, his math, his logic, and one by one, they found he had been right. Today, Tesla's ideas live in things we take for granted. The power that flows to our homes, that's AC, alternating current. The very system he dreamed up while pacing under a street lamp in Budapest. Wireless communication? Tesla imagined it first. He called it a world system for sending messages, images, even power through the air. Even wireless charging, placing a phone on a pad and watching it glow, began in a lab where Tesla lit bulbs with no wires at all. And radar? He sketched it, years before its time. He spoke about particles, frequencies, the music of energy, and slowly, the world has been learning to hear it. He was never good at business, never efficient at self-promotion, never ruthless enough to fight the way others did. And maybe that's why he faded. But it's also why he still glows. There is something quiet in his legacy, something soft. It doesn't shout, it doesn't brag, it simply exists. Like a current in the floor, like a hum behind the wall, like a light that doesn't flicker. It's in the background, always working, always present. There's a statue of Nikola Tesla at Niagara Falls. It stands near the site where his AC system first proved itself to the world. He stands tall, coat buttoned, gaze forward, and in his hand is a small coil. Not a sword, not a flag, not a trophy. Just a coil, a symbol of energy, of balance, of the quiet power he gave the world. There's another statue in Belgrade, Serbia, and a museum there filled with his papers, diagrams, and inventions. There's a crater on the moon named after him, a street in almost every major city in Eastern Europe, a unit of magnetic flux density, the Tesla. And of course, a car company, sleek, quiet, electric. It bears his name. But Nikola Tesla would not have cared about the brand. He would have cared about the energy, about the motion, the idea, still alive, still moving. He once said, "Let the future tell the truth and evaluate each one according to their work and accomplishments. The present is theirs, the future for which I have really worked is mine." And he was right, because now, in the age of streaming light and wireless everything, Tesla is not a ghost. He is a hum. A spark, a steady current still circling the globe. He walked alone, died alone. But his ideas didn't. They kept walking, through the labs of scientists who studied his notes, through the dreams of engineers who picked up his threads, through the wires, the frequencies, the pulses of a connected world he never got to live in, but helped build all the same. There is comfort in that. The idea that a person can be forgotten by fame, but remembered by function. That a soul can live on, not in monuments or medals, but in the things that simply work, quietly, constantly, beautifully. So if you ever feel like your efforts go unseen, if your ideas are too big, your timing off, your passions misunderstood, think of Nikola Tesla. The man who gave us the current and trusted the world to catch up. His body is gone, his tower is gone, but the light he dreamed of still glows. In every socket, every silent transmission, every flick of a switch, a little piece of him is still here, still humming, still turning, still awake even as we fall asleep. Bonus chapter: The Last Light. It was winter in New York. The kind of winter Tesla had always preferred. Quiet, sharp, just cold enough to slow the world down. The pigeons arrived late that morning, their wings dusted with snow. He had been expecting them. In room 3327 of the Hotel New Yorker, the air was still. The radiator ticked softly. A draft curled through the window pane and around the legs of the writing desk. Nikola Tesla sat with his spine upright, a blanket folded neatly across his knees. His suit, though worn, was freshly pressed. His thin hands trembled slightly as he poured a shallow dish of seed for the bird waiting outside his window. One white pigeon fluttered onto the sill. She had been coming for years now. Her feathers were perfect, her eyes a soft rose. She waited for no command. She simply arrived. "Good morning," Tesla said. His voice was faint but steady, touched still with his native accent, smoothed now by age. He watched her eat for a moment, then turned back to the desk. There was a letter he had started the night before, still unsent, addressed to no one. He read it over again. I have dreamed of towers, not for myself, but for the world. And though the towers have not stood, the idea has not fallen. He paused, crossed out the second sentence, then added carefully, what matters is that it was offered. The pigeon cooed softly. That afternoon, Tesla walked. He always walked. Even now, even in the cold, even as his body grew slow and stiff. He wore his coat buttoned to the collar and carried a simple cane, mostly out of habit, though his legs appreciated it more with each passing year. He passed the same buildings, the same park, the same faded bakery where once long ago he'd bought warm milk and a roll for 12 cents. Most people passed him without recognition, but some turned, wondering briefly about the tall, pale man with the thin mustache and the quiet eyes. Was he someone? Yes, but that didn't matter now. At Bryant Park, the pigeons gathered near his feet. He knelt, slowly, and spread seed with gentle fingers. Dozens of birds circled him, and again the white one landed near his chest as if to guard him. A child nearby pointed. Why do they all come to him? She asked. Her mother smiled, because they know he sees them. Tesla looked up. Their eyes met. And then he returned to the birds. That night, back in his room, he opened a journal. Not his technical notebooks. Not the patent folios. The other one. The one for memories. He wrote, I dreamed last night of the stream behind our house in Smiljan. The wheel I built as a boy still turned, though no hand had touched it in 60 years. My mother's hands moved like thoughts. I still see them in my sleep, never idle, always weaving something new. My brother Dane used to walk ahead of me through the tall grass. I followed the sound of his voice more than the path. He paused, then wrote, Some people build to be remembered. I built because I saw it, and it wanted to exist. He closed the journal softly and looked out into the dark city. Lights twinkled in distant windows. He liked knowing they were there, glowing, consistent, warm. Each one proof of what he had given. The following morning, a letter arrived, typed, formal, from Belgrade. It invited him to return, to be honored, celebrated, remembered. He smiled faintly. I am not finished, he whispered, folding the letter carefully. But he placed it beside his bed. Later that day, he sat for tea in the hotel dining room. The waitress didn't know who he was. Most didn't. But she noticed the way he arranged his napkin with quiet precision, how he stirred his tea exactly 9 times before drinking, how he folded his hands, fingertips touching. She didn't speak, but as she collected his cup, she gave him a small nod, not of recognition, but of respect. He returned it. That afternoon he walked farther than usual. The sky had cleared, the wind had softened. He paused near an old shop window filled with radios. Dozens of them, all glowing, all humming, different sizes, different models, all tuned to different frequencies. Tesla watched them silently, his reflection hovering among the display. He closed his eyes, and in the static, real or imagined, he heard something familiar. A kind of harmony. He stood there for a long while, and then, cane in hand, walked slowly back to the hotel. That night the white pigeon did not come. Tesla waited by the open window. The air was still, the seed dish untouched. He lit a small lamp beside the bed, then turned off the overhead light. He sat in the armchair by the window and waited. Midnight came, then 1, then 2. He dozed, and in his dream she returned, not flying, but glowing. In the dream, she landed on his chest and looked into his eyes. From her wings poured light, not harsh, not blinding, but soft, like moonlight through water. He reached for her, but she lifted gently away, higher, out of the room, out of reach. And then he was alone again. He woke just before dawn. The city outside was still half asleep. A few taxis passed, their engines humming like distant motors. He dressed slowly, sat once more at the desk, and wrote, "She came to me in light. When she left, I knew the world did not need me anymore. It only needed the work." He closed the notebook, folded his hands, and breathed. That evening, the manager of the hotel noticed his light was still on, but no movement. They knocked, no answer. They entered gently. Tesla was in bed, face relaxed, hands folded across his chest. Beside him, on the desk, a journal, a half-finished letter, and a single white feather on the windowsill. The room was quiet, as if something had powered down, not ended, just gone still. News of his passing traveled slowly. There was a war, headlines filled with bombs and generals, but quietly the world began to remember. Engineers whispered, scientists paused, and in Belgrade, bells rang. His papers were gathered, his name slowly returned to textbooks. And far beyond the war, far beyond even that century, the light he had imagined continued to glow. Today, it surrounds us, not in statues, not in monuments, but in power, in pulses, in the soft buzz of a screen, in the flicker of a filament, in the quiet, unseen current that flows, just as he said it could. Some say his life was lonely, and maybe it was, but it was also full and still moving, not in footsteps but in frequencies, still humming, still resonating, still here.